Hi all, welcome to the Business Analysis Training Program. In our previous session, we have covered concepts relating to system analysis and then we started with system design. So within system design, we have seen what is an activity diagram, how a single view activity diagram is created, how horizontal and vertical swim lane activity diagrams are created. And I gave you a brief description of what is a sequence diagram. So today we will see how to create a sequence diagram and how to create system architecture diagram. What is system architecture and what are submodules defined in system architecture, and then how do you create a system architecture diagram. If time permits, we'll also study what is the business requirement documentation. Within sequence diagram, as I told you, it is the sequence of events that take place between the user and the system or system and system. So for example, here we have a user and then we have two different systems. So it is the sequence of events that's taking place between two different type of actors. One is user is a human actor, system is a non-human actor. So user to the system is one way communication, and then system to system is another way of communication that is happening, or the sequence of events that is taking place. So that's about the sequence diagram. The explanation for it, we will see how to create a sequence diagram and how do you create different sequence diagrams for different modules or functionalities in the system. Okay, here is a sample sequence diagram. Here we're going to capture the sequence of events that's going to take place on a user login page. Login success, login failure, and how do you use activation blocks to define set of events together. Okay, first we will start with simple login success sequence diagram. Open Visio, view, remove rulers, page width, scroll up. Go to more shapes, software, UML sequence. So there are different diagrams here. The most important ones that you must learn are object lifeline. So these describe the object or the entities which are involved in the system. So first I've dragged one lifeline. I need two more lifeline. One is the system lifeline. The other two, one is the user lifeline. The other two objects are for system lifeline. Okay. So now you have the object lifeline created. You have to define the actors. So who are all the actors here? You have the user actor, software front end, so you can increase the size of it as per the need. Okay, you can increase the height and you can also increase the width. And then we have the software database. So increase the size and match it. Perfect. Now, what are the sequence of events that take place between the user and the software front end and software front end and the software database? So as I already told you, we have a message shape and a return message shape. From you to the other party can be another human interactor or a system interactor. So you will use a message shape from the other party, that is a human interactor or a system interactor. The message that comes to you is the written message. Very simple. From the user, the first level of interaction is open the application. The application must be opened by whom? By the user. So what do you mean by open the application? If it is a website, the user should open the website. Simple as google.com, yahoo.com. That's opening the website. So the user must open the website. So as soon as the website is open, there is a request that is made by the user to the software front end. Drag it. So once you drag, you will not see any dots up to the time you drag a line. So when you drag a message or a written message, you will see as many dots here. So you can choose the nearest, the first starting dot, drag it and connect it to the first dot here. So you'll have dot references on both the object lifelines created. So first, number the events. 1, open the application. Done. So from the user, there is a request that's gone to the software front end. Now from the software front end to the user, request login details. Okay. Now from the user to the software front end, the details should get entered by the user, and whatever the details entered by the user, that should go to the system for verification. So there is a message or the details get entered by the user and it goes to the system. So this is 3, enter details. Okay, next, from the software front end, whatever is the username and password. So what type of a login information do we generally enter? We enter the username and password. So once the user enters the username and the password, it should go from the software front end to the software database. So what is the flow there? There is a message that is flowing from the software front end to the software database. And what is this? Verify user details. Okay. Next, from the database, verification happens to see if the username and password are matching with the data that is there in the database. So what is the sequence of event? Verification happens in the software database and correct user login details, whether it's a success or a failure, message is passed from the software database to the software front end. So from the database to the system, correct user login details. Or you can say user login details have been authenticated. This is the correct way of writing it. User login details have been authenticated. So once authentication is successful, what happens? A login successful message is passed from the system to the user. So from the system to the user, you should use a written message. So what is this? Number 6, login successful. And then user accesses the first page of the application. So once a login is successful, what happens? The user will be able to view the first page of the application. So select the message, drag it, 7, user accesses the first page of the application. Okay. So now these are much lengthier. You have completed your sequence of actions. So you can click on the object lifeline. Remember the names that I'm using. Object lifeline. These will be asked in the interview. What is an object lifeline? So you should be in a position to answer. Right, now the diagram is ready. Make sure it's all even and it's not one lengthier and the one shorter. It should all look even. This is now ready. So you should say sequence of events. So what's happening in between one object lifeline and another object lifeline? It is a sequence of events that's taking place. Okay, it is for your understanding. If you do not want to show this, it is fine. They won't expect you to have this. You can also ignore this. It is only for your understanding I'm showing it. It is very clearly understood. In a documentation, when you provide a sequence diagram like this, it is very clearly understood that these are sequence of events that are taking place. So for each and every sub-module of your system, not the main functionality, you can have the sequence of activities defined for main module as well as for the sub-modules. Now we will see. So here what we have seen is what is the event? It is a login success event. What happens if the login is a success? Let this go here. Okay. So I'm giving a title to it. It is a login success. Next, we will see how to create sequence of events for login failure. So you don't have to redo the diagram. You can just copy this. So that's the best part of Visio. You don't have to redo things again and again. Align it in a straight line. It should all look proper. So it is always good to group it. Okay. Main reason is if the spacing is not proper, then if you just have it as shapes, it will be difficult to select. So now it is a group. I can confidently copy this group and move it down. So later you can ungroup it. That's not an issue. So over here, this is a login failure. This is for login failure. So you have to place it here. Now ungroup this. So it is the same sequence of events, open application, request, login, etc. But it will change only from the database response. Here there is a system failure and it gets entered in the log file within the database, software database. So you have to create a new message. Use a self message over here and then say system failure. Okay, it is grouped. That's the problem. I don't want to disturb that. It is a system failure note entered in the log file. That's it. Okay, so there is a system failure. So what is the set of actions that you have to take? Find incorrect user login details. Next, what is the response from the database to the system? Incorrect user login detail. Now, the system will get to know from the database that the login, username and password have not matched and it is a failure. So, from the software front end to the user, there is a message that the login is bad and retry. Okay, so this is how it will be. For a login failure, there is an incorrect match of username and password given. So a failure note gets entered in the log file of the database, and then from the database to the system, incorrect user login details flow, that message is passed on, and from the system to the end user, bad login retry message is passed on. So this is how we represent a login failure event. So these are the sequence of events that would take place when there is a system failure. When there is a login failure, the credentials do not match. Next, we have to use an activation block. We'll see how to use an activation block, how to create login success and login failure. So here, within the object Lifeline, you'll have to add activation blocks. So first, I do not want to copy this or copy the previous one. I would like to redo this for you all so that you understand how to create an activation block version of the sequence diagram. Remove the page break. Okay. Now, for each and every set of activities that you would like to add a block, you have to drag the activation block, and when you drag the activation block, you will see that these dots are activated. So you'll have to leave the activation block on these dots. You can fill the activation block with a color. So by doing this, you're grouping the activities. That's it. And then you can only increase the height of the block. You cannot adjust the width of the block. That is not allowed. So now I need a smaller block because I just have 3 events to be grouped. One is the application. The first message is from the user to the software front end. Open the application and then request for login details, and then from the activation block, this entire block stops with entering the details, and then on the system activities begin. That's why we have grouped these 3 activities or sequence of events together. I need the other object Lifelines. And then this is the user. We already have this, so we can use it. So it is a software front end. This is a software database. From here, drag a message. So now when you drag a message line, you will see that the dots are activated. So keep it, there are 4 dots, first dot, second dot and the third dot. You can keep it at the first dot, okay, because it should be the beginning, and then place it correctly. Okay, now we are working on login success, right? So we have to ungroup this. Take this and copy it here. Any questions? I heard some sound. Okay, there's some background noise. Right. So next you have a message from the system. So if you want a block here, you can have a block defined here as well. This is also correct. So this is a system block. And then from the system block, to the user, then from this to this. Okay, this is how it is basically done. Having time in view, I'm not doing it in detail. You can finish this. But I just wanted to show you how to use the blocks, because we have already seen how to create the message, written message between user and system, and the only thing I wanted to show in addition is how to add activation blocks. So these are referred to as activation blocks. Another concept is actor lifeline represents a participant that is external to the system. The vertical line represents the sequence of events that occurs during an interaction, while time progresses down the line, right? So if you have a participant that is external to the system, supposing you have a component that is external to the system, or you have an external stakeholder. You cannot give an example of external. Okay, you can take an external system that interacts with the actual system. So that is referred to as an external system, right? So if you have to show the activities that's going on between the actual systems, actors and entities, system, database, users are all depending, they are all dependent on your system, whatever you are creating. But if there is an external system, then you will have to use the actor lifeline and not the object lifeline. So how the actor lifeline looks, it will look like this. So here is the external system. It can be a system or it can be a human actor. So this could be a banking system from where you are getting the information. Okay. So if this is happening, then you have to create the actor lifeline, which represents the external banking system, and whatever is happening between your software, the banking system and the software database, you will capture those details. So how would it look? There is a message from your system to the banking system for recheck login creds. Creds means credentials. So this is also possible. Next, other than that, we also have self message. We have seen how it has to be used. This is how, if there is a message that is running within your system, if there is going to be an activity performed within your system, then you should have a self message like this. Okay. Other than that, you can also add asynchronous message, but not mainly used because we have the message, written message and self message. These three are enough to describe. Other than that, you also have a loop fragment. Okay, a loop fragment means, this is a very important diagram. Activity diagram and sequence diagrams are very important. Okay, this is how a loop fragment looks. So if you have any particular activity in your system that is looped, loop means, if you've learned any programming languages, looping means doing a task again and again, iteratively, n number of times. So within your system, if there is a task that is going to happen n number of times, then you can use a loop fragment to represent that set of action or events within the loop fragment. Okay, but this is how a sequence diagram is created. Other things are optional. You can try if you want to have optional events, but generally, we define all the events. We don't go for any optional events or other events. All are properly defined events within a system. Only thing we could add is the external system, which is an actor lifeline, and then if there is a looping event that would take place in your system, then you will have the loop segment defined. That's it. Save the work. In sequence diagram, you don't have anything called as a vertical swim lane or horizontal swim lane. Sequence diagram is a sequence diagram. That's it. This itself looks like a swim lane, so there isn't any further swim lanes added to this. Then you can define the text for it. So what it is, so it is nothing but the sequence of events for a user login page. You can give the numbers. Select all, align it properly, go to view, fit to page. So they will take printouts of this and they will circulate to understand the sequence of events. So while explaining in a meeting, rather than having just points on a PowerPoint slide, if you have something like this to describe the systems involved and the type of interactions that can take place within the system, it's very clear what are the internal systems and what are the external systems involved and what is the sequence of event or activity that's going to take place. It's very presentable and understandable even at a layman. Those who are not from a technical background, they can also easily understand what you're trying to do here. Save it. That's it. So we are done with the sequence diagram. Next. So the next level is the functional design. So how functional design is done. In the user login form, how the user gets authenticated. What are all the various text boxes that should be there? Text box, a button, a combo box, a radio button, right? So you must know what all these are. I will show you some sample. Okay. So how will a control, so these are basically referred to as control. This is how a button will look. Just a button. This is how a drop down will look. So this is referred to as a drop down. When you have data in it, it will display in the drop down. We have all used these kind of controls in our day-to-day activities, but still we do not know the actual technical names of these, right? So be it a standalone application or a web-based application, these are standard set of controls that will be used. So this is a checkbox. So when we complete surveys, we would have seen this kind of a checkbox, right? So when you click on this, there's a tick mark. When you can tick, you can untick. So this is called as a check because you're checking. It's a checkbox. This is a drop down. This is a button. You have a list box. A list box is very much similar to a drop down. In a drop down, the data is represented in the drop down list. Whereas in the list box, it will be listed within the list box. Right? It will be within the list box, one below the other. Then radio button. So many times we have seen, while we mention the gender, there will be two radio buttons, right? Male and female, there are two radio buttons. And many times, we have this radio buttons for different purposes. So you can, when there are two radio buttons, you can check only one radio button out of that. Not both the buttons can be selected at a time. So these are all some common things that you must know. When you have radio buttons, n number of radio buttons, for one particular selection, if you have two, only one can be selected, right? So wherever you have a functionality where one value should be selected, yes or no, so you can use a radio button for that. Wherever you have multiple values to be selected, checkbox can be used. So these are all the things that a developer will do, but as a business analyst, you must know all these controls and how you can create a mock-up, screen mock-up of where these controls must be used. That's what we will see in the wireframes. So this is a scroll bar. So within the application, there can be a scroll bar. So where do you find a scroll bar in Excel? There's a scroll bar here. It's a vertical scroll bar. You can also have a horizontal scroll bar. A label. Yes, Sonia, this is Excel. I'm just showing you as an example. So similar to this, or wherever, whichever application you talk about, ASP.NET, VB.NET, whichever application, web-based, standalone-based applications, you will have these controls, and the way these controls are used in those programming languages are different. That's the only thing. But when they say a button means within a login page, whatever you click, if this is going to have, what is a button? After you enter the details, you have to type somewhere, right? So that's called as a login. You have to click on the login button. So when they give you a requirement, they say, okay, user should enter the details and click on the login button. So that's what it means. User will fill in the username and the password, and then the user will click on the login button. So here is a label. What is a label? A label describes what that particular form is meant for, or a page is meant for. So here it is a login page, or this is, yeah, it's a page. You generally have this as a label or a title. Okay, so this is how it would look. Assume if this is your web page, this is how it will basically look. So do you remember seeing this kind of a drop down on a web page? So where you have different options. So there will be some options in it, and then there can also be a checkbox placed next to it which says select. Okay, something like this. You select. So these are all common things that we use on a web page, even when we browse the simplest of a website. But we are not bothered, initially we might not be bothered much to know the names of it. But as a business analyst, you must know what these are. These are nothing but controls. So they are controls either on your forms or your web page. And this is a frame. So at times they may also talk about a frame. So this is a frame. This frame is mainly meant for login, user login. So if I say user login, this will contain only details pertaining to the user login. So yeah, these are all general ones, and I'm not able to use a text in this. I don't know why. It's not activated. Okay. So here you can have something called as the username, and then the text box, password, text box, and then the login button. Username, text box, password, text box, login button. So the user enters the details and clicks on the login. So what is this? Login is a button. Button is a control. So these are all important controls you must know. This is a frame. So within a frame, particular set of controls will be placed. This is a button. This is a radio, R-A-D-I-O, radio button. This is a checkbox. This is a drop down. This is a scroll bar. And then this is a list box. These are all very, very common controls that will be used in any type of application, be it a standalone application or be it a web application. I will save this for your reference. So I will call this controls description. Okay. So now getting back to our functional design. In the system functional design, you will be primarily working on these kind of controls. So you will get to know what is a username, password, and how it should be designed. So here it starts. The 2 text boxes for entering the username and password. 4 drop-down combos to select the user role, department name, project name, and the project version. So now you know what is a drop-down. Submit button. Button is just a button. If the name of that or the functionality of that is to submit. Submit means accept, save. Then that is called as a submit or a save button. If it is for a cancel activity, it is a cancel button. If it's for a reset activity, it is a reset button. If it is for some user activity, it is the new user registration button. So this is how the actual functional design will be done, and then you will create a mock-up. So in the mock-up, here you have 2 text boxes. So what is a text box? When the user clicks within a text box, the user can type. Okay, what is a drop down? In the drop down, user cannot type anything. Instead, the user can only select the data from the drop down list. So these are all referred to as drop down or combo box, C-O-M-B-O, combo box. These are buttons: login button, cancel button, new user button. This is a frame, login frame. So within the bigger frame, you have a smaller frame that is for user login. That's what this mock-up screen means. So when you give a mock-up screen like this, the developer will build the application just like what you give them. They will create the same set of text boxes, drop downs or combos, and the buttons. So when those buttons are selected, clicked on click of the button, there will be an event. Please remember this term, click of the button, there will be an event. There can be events when you type something within a text box, when you make a selection within a drop down, or when you click on the button. Any of the controls that you use on your application, form, or a page can have a functionality in the backend. That functionality you will describe. You will stop with the description of it. It is the responsibility of the developer to understand what is that description. That is called the functioning of the system. Why are we describing it as a functionality of the system? Login is a functionality. It should accept all these details, and then it should perform some sort of an action in the backend. That is taken care by the code. Who does the coding? Developer will take care of the coding part of it. Okay, so you must clearly understand what is an event, who is an actor, and what are the different types of controls that you can define. Within the system function design, please get into a level of defining your functionalities, modules and submodules at a system design level. You are designing the system. You're not analyzing the requirements. You're not describing requirements. You're describing a system. Describing a requirement is what you do in system analysis. Describing a system is what you do in the system design. Okay, so in the system design, you will only talk in terms of which text box, which label. So what is a label? Something that is describing a text box is a label. Username is a label. Password is a label. User role is a label. Okay, so you have to clearly mention all those. There are labels. There are these many text boxes drop down. So that's how a system design should be defined. Most of the time, you can also take the help of a developer to come up with a system design, and it will be finalized in the agile discussion. So only in the sprint, if it is approved, if your mock-up screen is approved, it will go for a development. So similar to that, we have the next module, new user sign up. What was the first module? It was for user login. So how it should look. Next is new user sign up. What are the set of activities that the new user sign up should do? All those activities, all the labels, text boxes, combo boxes, buttons involved in such an activity should be described. Similarly for data acquisition. So module by module you will do this. Manual data entry. So within the main module of data acquisition, after login, first stage is data acquisition, then data modification, algorithm and data reporting. Okay, so here within the data acquisition, we have different modules, right? So automatic entry for review defects, that is the first one. Then automatic entry for different data sources. You will describe all that. When there is a manual entry, you have to create a separate system design for that and describe the screen or the page where the manual entry can be made and how it should look. So in the manual entry, what are we having? We are having labels, text boxes, and we are having a grid. This is a data grid. Okay. This part where you see a table structure, right? So whenever data is entered in the text, automatically it will get into the grid. Similarly, here you have the text boxes and labels. As the data is entered, when they press the enter key, automatically the data will get filled in the grid. So in the same way, you have to describe each of the main system functions and what are all the activities or sub-modules, right? What is a main module? A module is a system function. So this entire application is divided into data acquisition, modification, algorithm, and data report functions. So within functions are also referred to as modules. So within functions or modules, you have sub-modules. Those are referred to as sub-functionalities or sub-modules of the system that you have to describe. Okay, so here it is. So this is how it should be. So that ends the system design, and then you move on to the reporting part of it. So within system design, there is one additional concept we have to discuss. That's the use case modeling. How do you create use case scenarios and use case diagrams? So within a functional design, system design, it's divided into two. One is the architectural design and the functional design. So I've told you within architectural design, you'll have the activity diagrams, use case diagrams, and sequence diagrams. And then within functional design, you will have the modules which I just described to you. This entire part that is defined in this document, they may ask you to create it as a separate document. The structure of it will be very similar to a BRD or a FRD templates that we will see in the near future. But then your functional design document, after your functional requirement document, you have to prepare a functional design document. A functional design document will mainly contain all these details other than objective, statement of work, etc., which you have described as in the top portion of this document. We have seen some of the generic concepts, right? So in the functional requirement document, you'll mainly deal with the system analysis. In functional design document, you'll primarily work on the system design, divided into architectural design and functional design. So we are done with the system design. Next, we'll move on to the system architecture. So how the entire system architecture is defined. So in the functional design, or it's also referred to as a system design, you are describing the architecture in terms of the system design. You're not describing the overall architecture of the system, right? So even before that, you have to define the overall architecture of the system. So this is a generic view. So how will you do this? You have to first identify all the data sources from where the data is going to be fetched. Then where is that going to be saved? That's a server, it's on a server. Then the entire system is divided into how many blocks. So the first block is meant for automatic data acquisition, manual data acquisition. It goes into data acquisition, which is fed into the local database. From the local database, it goes into data modification functionality or module, algorithm module, data reports module. So all of the modules get their data from the local database. So data from the raw data, from the data source, which is a raw data, moves into the ASAP server. From the server, the required data is acquired. That is automatic data acquisition. Manual data is also entered. That goes into a local database. From the other data sources or databases, it is mainly collated and collected within a local database. And then from there, the data gets distributed to other modules. Also, the local database that contains the data should be used by the website. That is the ASAP web. ASAP web means it is the website. So here by using a cube, I'm representing a website and I'm telling that the website will use the data from the local database. So it is a solution to the entire problem statement that we have received. High level design of the solution. We are not going into a granular level. In system design, you get into the granular level of design. Whereas this is just a solution architecturing of your system which gives the high level design. And then you have module based description. So in this diagram, what do you mean by raw data? What do you mean by ASAP server? What do you mean by each of the representations that you have shown in the system architecture? That you have to describe in words. I'm not going to go through the text defined here. You have the document. Please go through the text. But then you have to define each and every shape that you have presented. For every shape you have a name. So what is FC? What is Charm-NT? What is TMS? Entire thing stands for what? What your ASAP server is going to do. What do you mean by data acquisition? What is the activity that's performed between ASAP server and the data? So theoretically or project wise, description is a must in this phase of documentation. So once the system architecture is completed, next you go to the module based architecture. That is, the entire ASAP application is subdivided into 5 modules. So this entire application that you're representing here as the main system architecture, you're defining the system architecture at a high level. Remember, database architecture could be much huge than what you think it is, right? So there is a data modeling team that will be working on creating the ER diagrams, mainly the data modeling part of it. And then from there, the database architect will take the ER diagram, the relationships defined in it, and he or she will create the actual database. In a module level architectural design, you will show a breakup of the architecture at module level. So here you have the databases. From the databases, data is moving to the server. Then you have an interface. Okay, what type of interface? It's a VB.NET or VB interface. From there, it is moving to your local database. So this is a high level design that you're describing how the data could move and what are all the various stages that are involved in it, right? So it is a very high level design of the module. So within this, within full circle, there can be an architecture that will be taken care by the respective teams. The database team will work on one, server team will design the server architecture, the front end architecture for the system is designed by a developer. But high level design for a module should be done by a business analyst. How data modification is done. Make it look attractive as much as possible. How you can make it look attractive? Attractive means don't paint it with different colors. Keep it very professional because you're adding it to a document. You know, it could be a BRD, FRD, FDD. So these are all formal documents in your company. Don't use brain freezing colors like red, dark blue, dark green, light green. It won't look good. Okay. So as much as possible, keep it to gray. In your architectural diagram, please use different shades of gray and keep it light. Don't use any dark colors. Make it look presentable. Okay. So you can try different shapes. All the shapes that are available in basic flowchart and general shapes can be used. Do not use any function specific shapes that are there in the Swimlane. Do not use any start, end. These are all more specific to the type of diagram you're using. But here you can use some of the shapes in basic flowchart and general shapes. It's accepted for representing the system architecture. So wherever you want, try to use good diagrams as much as possible like this. So web interface from the database, web server, and then it goes to ASP.NET web page. So this is the high level. It's at a very high level. From the server, from the database to the server, data flows. From the server again to the web page, the data flows. Okay, so this is how the design is done. The architectural design is basically done. Now we will see how to create the architectural design for the entire system. And I want you to, once you learn this, it will be much easier to create for modules, right? So we will see how to create it for an entire system. So we already have this in place. We will see how we can replicate it. Okay, so this is the entire system architecture. So here we're going to fetch raw data from where? From SQL Server, Oracle, Sybase, external data from third-party components, Excel file input, flat file input, XML file input, and then software main server for staging of raw data. This is the main server where staging of raw data happens. You will very commonly hear this term staging. What do you mean by staging? There are two concepts. One is called OLTP and the other one is called OLAP. OLTP stands for Online Transaction Processing. OLAP stands for Online Analytical Processing. Very, very common term. When it comes to OLAP, you will hear the term cube. You just know the terms OLAP and cube are interrelated. OLTP is the raw data, not in a particular format. So what is this also referred to as? Unstructured data. So this is moved to staging. Staging is a server that collects all the required data for the data cleansing and data extraction feed. Common term. Feed means giving data to the database, inputting data into the database. How do you input? You have to give it as a feed. ETL process is carried out. ETL is another common term. ETL stands for extract, transform and load. Extract means extract the data. Transform means do some changes to the data. Clean it, modify it, change the data type, whatever you want to do with that data, and then load that into the database. Which database? Load this into the local database. So from staging, data follows the ETL process and moves into the local database. From staging, it moves to ETL, and then from ETL it moves to ETL process. It's a process. So your raw data, which is an unstructured data, is cleansed. All type of data manipulations are done. Data types are changed. Data is trimmed. If unwanted characters are there, dummy characters are there, it's removed. If there is unwanted numeric within alphabets, that are also removed. All different types of rules are applied on the staging data or the raw data, and that moves into ETL. So then you perform the ETL, right? From staging data, you perform the ETL. Within ETL, you have to extract the data, but then transform the data and then load it into your local DB. DB means database. So these are very, very common terms. This is the actual process that is carried out from getting the data from various sources, staging it. So there are a lot of processes involved. These many processes are involved in this stage. So it is a high level diagram, correct? So from all these raw data sources, data is obtained in a very unstructured format or whatever format, and it is dumped. So that is the staging server or a staging source. It can be a text file, CSV file, tab separated file, SQL file, Access file, Excel file, whatever type of file, XML file, JSON file, name it, and it's there. And then Within the system, first level is the data acquisition. So from the staging server, how do you get the required data? So that's what is represented here. Data acquisition is there. Automatic data acquisition happens and manual data acquisition happens in the data acquisition stage. Then the data moves into MS Access database. Then the third level is that data is used in the third block where algorithm is generated, data modification is first done, algorithm is generated and data reports are generated. That local data is also used within the website. So this is the complete high level overview of the process, and this is how we are defining it in the form of a diagram. Look at the way I have created the diagram, the font size, neatness of how it is created. Very, very simple. I have not used any complex ones. It is a basic shape and the basic flowchart shape. That's all I have used. Okay. We will see how we can recreate this. Very important. That's why I'm showing it to you. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Keep it neat and clean, whichever diagram you create. That's the first expectation they will have from a business analyst. Don't make it look clumsy. You can have as many pages needed for whichever diagram you create if you want to interlink those diagrams, but don't try to dump everything into one. It will not look good. Okay, here the first thing you should concentrate is about the inner shapes. Don't start from outer ones. If there is a problem with the sizing, you will have to change everything. So don't ever start with outer shapes, a dotted rectangle or a dashed rectangle. Always start with the inner system. Have a draft of this on a whiteboard or in your notepad and then start doing it. So first I will create the raw data sources. For a square, a rectangle, you can also use the process block. Plan it accordingly, plan it properly and then create it. Otherwise spacing will not be sufficient. First you need a database. Turn it. Reduce the size of it and move it inside. Next, what are the different data sources? Get proper spacing. And then you have the external data from a third-party component. So how do you present that? You have to present it using this symbol. We know this. We have already practiced this as a part of the basic flowchart diagram. Next, I need Excel file input. So this is the data symbol. If the space is not sufficient, don't place it inside. Place it outside. Reduce the size. Make it suitable to this and then add it. Still it is not, so reduce it even one more level. Okay, this is enough. Then you have Excel input, flat file input and XML file input. 2, 3. Drag it. Then name these. So you can have SQL server. Automatically this text direction will change. It's called text direction. This is the text and it is the direction. So you must know all of these because they may ask you what do you mean by text direction or how do you rotate a shape. External data from third-party component. In the interview, they will ask you to create a sample system architecture. So you must be very clear how do you create a system architecture. Create a simple diagram on the paper that they give you. Don't make it complex. If the number is not found in the drop down, you can always type that number. Only whole numbers are accepted. So now I have a number 7. Though it is not in the drop down, still I have a reasonable sizing done on number 7, which is not too tiny. So number 7 is a good small representation, reasonable one for them to read it. Flat file input. Very easy concept, but many of them will find this difficult because they do not know the logic how it has to be created. XML file input. Use the proper shapes. That's the reason I'm showing you all combination of shapes. These are the maximum combination of shapes that you might need. A website, then a report, a staging server, actual database, external, different types of external files. Excel file, flat file, XML file. So all these are data related. So data is a parallelogram, four-sided shape. External data. Then you have the database. If you have any document to be shown involved in this, if it's a Word document, you can also include a Word document. Supposing you have an additional Word document that is used as an input. So here is a small document symbol and you can call this doc. So if you're placing it like this, there is a relationship between your XML file and the doc. Always Word documents are in the XML format. I showed you the other day, right? So when you create a Word document, in the backend, data is actually saved in the form of an XML file. So if you have something like this, it means there is a Word document and an XML file related to that. Or you can also have it like this. If you feel that is not looking good, you want to show it separately, you can show it separately. Keep the spacing proper. Next, you have to represent the staging server. How can you represent a server? It is a code process, right? If you think it is actually only a database, then you can directly use a big database. That's it. It's your database server. If it's only data related, but this server is going to have different type of information in it. So we do not want to just show it as a database server. We have to show it as a common server. So how a server, what is a server? It's a box, it's a computer, right? So we are using a square representation. You know, it can also represent a CPU. So that's why we are using this kind of a representation. And this is a staging server. Next, you have to define the other block. So while you define the other block, make sure this is all in correct order. Take a process. Most of the time you'll be using this process box. Give proper spacing. And then now see height is the same. Release it. Change it to a dash line because this is the overall. So overall process representation. Next, you need lines that should be added. So you know what to do. You have to search for a lateral line and then drag the line and change the type of the line. Make it a dash line. So I just showed you how to change the type of the line. So now it's much easier because already I have the lateral line and create it only once. Throughout your BA career, please have only one diagram that has a lateral line. Don't keep searching every time. Whenever needed, open that, copy it, paste it. Next, you need the different blocks. So I'm not going to do this again. These are rectangular process blocks. Copy this, paste it. I'm using a proper sizing of the box. That's why whenever I create a diagram, it is fitting in properly. I have a local database. And then we have the other blocks here. Blocks are nothing but modules. Okay. So here there is a sizing problem. It's okay. You can release this and then increase the external box's size. Okay, these lines are also a little bigger. Move the lines properly. Alignment is most important when it comes to system architecture or solution design. So why we're not having space, we're having this much bigger, that's why. Now select these and then place it accordingly. Space management within the diagram. Now you have to create a web view. A web view is generally created as a cube. Here is a cube. Under basic shape you have a cube. Drag it, drop it wherever you want and then reduce the height of it, place it properly and then call it a website. So it is a dummy representation, that's it. It is a website, that's what you're trying to represent. But how you're representing matters a lot, okay? Don't use shapes as per your wish, wherever you want. Using a rounded rectangle, half are rounded and half are sharp-edged rectangles. No, it won't look good. This is done. Now use a connector from here to this, then here to this, between this and this. Don't worry about the style, you can change it. If it is a curved line also you can change, you can adjust the shapes. I've already showed you how to do that, we will see it again. Then from here to okay, adjust the shapes. Keep it at the center. Now we have to connect these. It is not working, don't worry. You must know all the ways in which you can create a diagram. Different adjustments. You can't just rely on connectors. At times connectors may not work. So you must know what is the best alternative. Use a line. Somehow you have to get a presentable diagram. No one is bothered which type of a line you've used on Visio. Okay. Be careful with the arrows. Then this is a double-ended arrow because data flow. However, how your data flows, it's in that way that you have to create the arrows. So here this is happening because, yeah, so make it a straight line and then adjust it. Okay, so this is ready. You have to now create the outer surface for it. Observe how this is done. Once you create it, how do you place it? Don't place it inside a shape. Place it outside on the top edge corner, giving some spacing. Top and to the left there should be small spacing. Then release it. It's okay. It's sitting on the other shapes. That's absolutely fine. Drag it. Increase the height of it. Here you have an option, send to back and bring to front. Click on send to back. That's it. Don't click outside. Change the type to a dotted line. Okay. This entire diagram is now ready. Center it. Control A, group it. So now this is one diagram. You can move it however you want. You can leave it as is. If you wanted to give some coloring, you can do it. But my suggestion is use only gray. Already the gray part is defined here. Don't do any further decorations to this. Only if you want to show a gray shading on databases, you can try that. Otherwise, please leave it as is. Don't use any coloring. Keep it simple. It's just the system architecture. You want to define the name of the system, you can do it. Version number, you can do it. Don't put author, all that. Don't have as many lines here. What will happen is when, okay, there is another important thing I wanted to tell you. When the user looks at your diagram, if you have a lot of text above the diagram, concentration will go to the text part of it and concentration will not be on the diagram. So when you're presenting this, when you're projecting it on a PowerPoint, in a meeting, when you're projecting this as a PowerPoint slide, you will take a screenshot of this, you'll put it on a PowerPoint slide and you will present it. Or you will open Visio and you will present it. Imagine if you're having 5 lines defined here above the diagram. As a human being, as an user who's viewing the board where the details are projected, the eyes will be on the text. Eyes will not be on the shape. It is a normal human tendency. If there is a text, first the user will read what is that text and will not be bothered about what shape it is and what is the flow of data or flow of process that is happening. So always make sure, keep your text limited and give more importance to the type of shapes you use and then the flow. What is the flow that is happening between the system, each functionality of the system? That is more important than the text. Which version, that's okay. Version number is all fine. You can have at least another 1 line, not beyond that. If it goes beyond that, it won't look good. So these are all simple tricks to how to attract your end user, for them to tell that your work is the best. Okay, very neat diagram. Keep it at font 7 within the shapes. It will look very nice. 7 to 8. Don't go beyond that. It will look bad if you go beyond that. This is done. So now you know how to create system architecture, and then you know how to also create submodules. Submodules are very much similar to these, except for you will be defining each submodule. Save it, close it. I will save this for your reference. Okay. So with this, we complete this project document. We are done with ASAP document. We will close this. Next, we have to see the business requirement document. After that, business requirement document is theoretical. Each and every topic discussed in this is very important because this is the very first or the basic document that you will create. That will have you have to create the best document, only then you'll get a good impression about your work. Other than this, you have the use case scenario, diagram, cross-functional diagram, BMP diagram. So these are all diagram and modeling based. Okay. But before going into these kind of diagrams, we have to finish off with the business requirement document, how it is and how you have to create it, what is the main purpose of it. Okay. Here's the Brd template. It's already available on the blog. Open the template. So within the template, you have the project name, month or date, and the version number. And then you have the business requirement document, first page. Just give me a minute. I have a sample for this. Oh, okay. I have it in the diagrams. Okay. So here is a sample of how a BRD is filled, particularly the document revision part of it. Date, version number, and then the document changes. The date when you are starting with the task, the version number, and then the document name. What is this? It's an initial draft. That is the first explanation to the document. So next, you have the first sprint. It can be sprint based or it can be a document review based changes. So whatever is the type of a change that you're going to do to your document can be an outcome of a JAD session, a sprint session, a sprint bi-weekly meeting, or it can be a document review that is done by your lead. It can be from a development team, or it can be your manager, your system, whoever is reviewing the document, whatever change they suggest or whatever change is happening to the process or the requirement that, okay, when it is at a business requirement document level, it is the basic business requirement that you're capturing. You're not entering into a functional requirement or a system design or a functional design level. You are only at a level of a business requirement document. So enter all the reasons for changes that you make in the document. Approvals, who are the approvers of the document. Project sponsor, one who sponsors the project. Business owner, project manager, system architect, development lead, senior user experience lead, quality lead, and content lead. So you have to capture all their names. All these roles are important. All of them should approve the business requirement document. And then you please go just understand the document, how to create these tables, how to use a header and a footer in Word, etc. We'll have a separate session wherein I will show you how to work on different features of Word, how to recreate this document. Okay. So first 3-4 pages, we will try to recreate this document in Word. So as of now, try to understand the content of the document, how it is created. Title, their signature and date. So these are the important fields. Next, you start the document. The start of the document should be an introduction topic, and then you have the project summary. So within the project summary, you have to describe the overall goal of developing the project, high level description of what the product should do, and how they are aligned to the business objectives. So these are all the details that you should capture. So throughout this document, whatever is the comment that you see within the square braces, these are the actual meaning of that particular topic within the document. So what do you mean by objective? That's what it means. The ones that you see below that, which are in the normal font, so these are an example. This is an example of a live project. For a live project, how a BRD is created. So this document is both a template as well as a live BRD document. So here is an example of a widget. So what's a widget? Widget is a component of your application. So deliver a widget interactive naming system. This entire software is called WINS, Widget Interactive Naming System, that synchronizes naming and linking of all widgets in all systems across the enterprise. That is the main purpose of this product. WINS. WINS is the name of the product. Next. Avoid duplication of widget names and reduce time to production for existing projects. Support text searching on widget names or business descriptions. There are so many widgets that are available. So they want a common system that can synchronize and link all the widgets used across the organization. Enterprise means organization. Okay. Support text searching on widget names and business descriptions. Sync widget names and changes to Windows and Linux platform administration tools. Track changes to widget including new widgets, modified widgets, and widgets to be archived. Next, you have the background. So within the background, you have to give a brief description of how the project came to be proposed and initiated, including the business issues or problems identified, if any. If any, I'm underlining this because there can be an existing system based on which you're creating a new system, or there may not be an existing system at all. There can just be a process, right? So based on the existing process, you could be creating a new system. So you have to give a background for it. An expected benefit of implementing the project or developing the project. So what is the business requirement that's gathered for this software? Timely and accurate synchronization of widget names will reduce development efforts across the enterprise by eliminating duplicate names of widgets in development and deployment. Acme uncovered seriously high-level errors across testing environments, production errors, and increased rework due to lack of knowledge about widgets already in production. So widget is a component. There are several such process-based components that exist in that company. So they say there are so many such components, and when these components are used by the developers for development, not correct component widgets are being used, because there are so many widgets. So what is happening? That is resulting in system issues, testing issue, production issue, increased rework, etc. They want to bring down this rework relating to this widget. That's why this product is they are proposing this new product, WINS, Widget Interactive Naming System. So it synchronizes the names and linking of all the widgets. Business drivers. So within background, you have the business drivers. So list the business drivers that make development of this product important. That can be financial, operational, market, and environmental. Customers are looking for faster updates of the products on websites. Development group requires a scalable solution to track the widgets. So because of all these reasons, you are suggesting a new system. Project scope. Describe what is in scope and out of scope of the project. Why is this done? Because beyond the current budget, resources and timeline as approved by the project stakeholder, if the scope of the project is not defined, then this is mainly the project scoping is done to avoid scope creep. Just because some additional features or functionalities have to be added, if it goes beyond the current budget, resources and timeline as approved by the project stakeholder, then it's going to be really difficult. It's referred to as a scope creep. Means it's going out of the scope. So in scope functionality, relating to this project, what are the in scope functionalities that you can perform? Create name records for widgets, ability to create or delete widget names, search by name, team, date, last modified, synchronize widgets, provide audit trail, etc. So all these are in scope of the system functionality. Means you are accepting these functionalities as a business requirement and you will go ahead developing the system. Out of scope, create widgets for subsidiary company product lines. Search by approver or rationally. Archive of widget objects. So these are all out of scope functionalities in the current version development of the project software or current version release. Okay, in the first version release, all these are the functionalities or the business requirements that can be captured relating to WIN's product. These are the concepts which cannot be, requirements which cannot be accepted for the WIN's first release. So WIN's second release, you can accommodate these. Next is a system perspective. So within system perspective, there are various other details that you have to capture. Provide a complete description of the factors that could prevent successful implementation or accelerate the project's particular factors related to legal, regulatory compliance, existing technical or operational limitations in the environment, budget and resource constraint. Resource constraint means shortage of expertise, good employees in the company. Assumptions. Inventory of existing widgets completed by Q1. Testing data comprises scrubbed production data as okay. Whatever is the assumption that you have, you can mention it here. Any system constraints. Impending changes to privacy regulations may impact data dictionary design. Timeline for enterprise platform updates will impact execution of testing plan. So all these are main system constraints. You have to capture these system constraints and you have to make sure that these constraints are handled properly. Constraints are different from risks. Risks means previously approved Q2 or Q3 development projects may limit availability of development and QA resources. Q2 and Q3 development projects have taken off most of the resources and there are no resources. Means there are no employees who can work on your current project, WIN's project. So that's a risk, right? You're accepting the project, you're planning to start it by April, May, and you don't have the resources, necessitating outsourcing or additional budget requisition to meet the anticipated timeline. So if you have to hire a resource, you have to get an additional budget and a head count approval, or you have to outsource it to some other company, which also involves cost, right? So these are all considered as risks. There could be other different types of risks, which we have already seen as a part of the risk management or risk assessment. So you can add in all those risks that you identify. So with this, we are done with the project scoping and system perspective. So other than this, we have the business process overview. This is where your actual diagramming stuff will start. So this, if you remember this diagram, it is a Swimlane diagram. Okay. So here itself you can see how you can use your flowcharts diagrams that we are learning. So those are not just standalone diagrams that you create, that you send to your user and that it's not end of the story, right? So you have to use those diagrams wherever needed in the document. Describe how the current processes work, including the interactions between systems and various business units. Include visual process flow diagrams to further illustrate. Very important when you're describing the business process, you have to always use proper flow diagrams. Use case documentation and accompanying activity or process flow or sequence flow diagrams can be used to create the, don't go to a sequence flow level in a BRD. FRD you can go. BRD document, stick to basic process, business process flow diagrams, activity diagrams. So that's more than enough. You will also be learning use case diagrams in the next session. So next session, completely we will deal with use case modeling, use case scenario designing, use case diagram, and then how to create use case specification document. Okay, so within the business process review, you will perform an as-is system review, current business process analysis. So you have to analyze the existing system and come up with a process flow chart that can describe the existing system. Then a proposed business process, that is a to-be process. So for a to-be process, you will let them know, I mean, you will add all the details. Let them know means you let your management know about it, and then add all the details you have identified as an issue within the as-is process, and then you will show that as an enhancement in the to-be process. Create a new business flow. Don't use the same business flow. It should be a new business flow. Use different types of diagrams, however you want. That is relevant to the basic flowchart norms, notations in Visio. Please use Visio. Visio is a standard notation, right? So create the to-be process diagrams, how many ever diagrams you want to represent the to-be system functions. How do you want to divide it? How do you want to show the workflow? Use as many diagrams as possible. So once you're done with the business process overview, that is as-is and to-be process, next is the business requirement part. So in the business requirements part, the specific business requirements elicited from stakeholders should be listed, categorized by both priority and area of functionality to smooth the process of reading and tracking them. Include links to use case documentation. Include links to use case documentation and other key reference materials as needed. And also, you must wish to incorporate the functional and non-functional requirements into a RTM, requirement traceability matrix, which we will see at a later stage. So based on the priorities, so we have different types of priorities: critical, high, medium, low, future. A critical priority means it is a must. It should be that requirement is a must. No other argument about it. High priority. This requirement is high priority, but the project can be implemented at a bare minimum without this requirement. Okay, medium. It has a medium priority, but based on the decision you create it or you don't include it. Low priority. It's a nice to have feature. If time permits, cost permits, you'll do, otherwise ignore it. Future requirement, it's directly for a future version release, and you don't have to worry about that particular requirement in the current release. Next, how do you write the requirements? Within a business requirement document, you have to divide it. You have the functional requirement and the non-functional business requirements. So first is the general or base functionality. FR, G is the general and the number. A new master widget repository shall be created to house the name records, links and to house the name records and links to the widget object. Rationally, single repository simplifies. What do you mean by rationally? Rationally means it is the foundation or the justification or validation that you're giving to your description. Single repository simplifies management of widget development across 30+ development teams. So isn't this a justification? Why you're developing this? Because it is going to reduce the job of about 30+ development teams who are doing it in a very tedious way. Use case reference, we have to see the use case documentation. So once you have a use case specification, you can reference that here, or you can also create a use case within BRD. Absolutely fine. You can create a use case scenario and a use case diagram within BRD. Impacted stakeholders, who are going to be impacted: development team, infrastructure engineers, etc. Then you will add each and every business requirement to this list. You'll keep incrementing these FRG, the number, or you can have it as a BR. It's a business requirement. Next, you have the security requirements, reporting requirements, usability. These are all non-functional business requirements. So when they give you a business requirement, they will tell it's a security requirement. You will be gathering it, right? So let's say this is the kind of security that we are looking for. So as soon as you hear the term security, it should flash your brain. You must know, okay, this is a non-functional business requirement. Then within the functional and non-functional requirement document, it should go into the non-functional requirement stage. And this is handled as a non-functional requirement totally, which would not require any system design. Do you need a system design for security requirement? If at all needed, you have to contact your network team who works on the network-based security, or any data login encryption stuffs that you have to deal with your development team. Okay, so when you hear that business requirement, if you go through this document properly, you will be able to classify that requirement into a functional business requirement and a non-functional business requirement. So the other types include reporting requirements, usability requirement, audit requirements. And then you have the non-functional requirement that you will gather step by step. End of it, any acronyms, synonyms, any other technical jargons that you're using, any domain specific terms that you're using that a layman going through your document will not understand, then you have to create the appendix or appendices. So this is all about the BRD. A BRD should contain details about the objective of a project, background, what is a business driver, what's in scope, what's out of scope, what are the various system issues that you anticipate, as a system analysis to be system analysis, and then business requirements, that is priority based business requirements. What are the various functional requirements and non-functional requirements, and then appendix. If you have any information to be added as a part of the appendix, you have to add it. So that's all about the business requirement document. Very simple. If you know what your business requirement is all about, very easy to use this template, fill in the details. Okay, so that part is completed. Use case diagram scenarios, we will have it in the next session. We will see cross-functional diagram. It is very simple because we've already gone through the activity diagram. Cross-functional diagram must be much easier, and you have heard too much of theory for about 20 minutes. So it's a change for you all to see some diagram work. Okay, where are we? Here is the cross-functional, vertical and horizontal diagrams. The reason I'm showing you this is because in the BRD, if you have seen the as-is and to-be templates within that process, okay, here if you see, this is a cross, it's not an activity diagram, this is a cross-functional swim lane diagram. It's a cross-functional horizontal swim lane diagram. System, business 1, business 2, system. And then here in to be you have business 1, business 2, system. So this is a cross-functional swim lane diagram. We'll see how to create this so that you can practice creating this in the BRD diagram. Sorry, BRD documentation. Okay, so open Visio. So in Visio, you have to select cross-functional flowchart shapes. It's available separately. Take that. And you also need basic flowchart shapes in combination. That's all you need. Now, what are we going to do? Find below a sample cross-functional flowchart that describes the process of customer placing an order Sales department processing the order, warehouse in charge ships the item to the customer, and also customer service is taken care of. 4 different verticals or 4 different functions of the system that is handled here. What are the functions? Customer function, sales function, warehouse function, customer service. You know what is a customer function? Sales function. You know what is a warehouse? Warehouse means where stocks of all products are placed. If the customer is ordering for a travel bag, okay, a travel bag will not be there within the sales department. They cannot have all the travel bags stacked one below the other in a sales department. It will be in the company warehouse. A warehouse can be within the company or it can be away from the company, or a company may not have a warehouse at all. They can just be suppliers. They will get the requirement from the customer. Supplier will contact the manufacturing unit or a factory. A factory is an independent unit compared to the company. So if you've learned supply chain management and logistics, you will know more about this. But just to give you an idea, a warehouse can be within the company or it can be away from the company. If you're applying for a BA job in a supply chain management company or a supply chain management related CPG and FMCG, you must know these two terms. CPG stands for consumer product goods and FMCG stands for fast moving consumer goods. So both of these are relating to the supply chain and logistic. Very easy domain to understand, right? Customer places an order, sales processes the order, from warehouse the items are collected, shipping happens, shipping goes to the shipped item is received by the customer, customer service takes place. Simple. The domain is very simple. Okay. Now we will see how to create this cross-functional flowchart for 4 different functions within your system. So imagine you're automating a supply chain process within a company that deals with sales of product. The company has a warehouse all by its warehouse within the organization. Okay, within the company there are 2 blocks. First block in the campus deals with all the calls, customer calls, emails, getting requests, feeding into the computer system, etc. The second block is only the warehouse. It has only warehouse activities. There are no computer operators sitting in a warehouse. There's only one computer and one person sits to look at the data, etc. But there are huge sheds. Those are all sheds where the products are manufactured and then stored. Okay. A manufacturing unit can be in the company or it can also be away from the company. But warehouse is where all the products, manufactured goods are stored. With this basic understanding, let us create this cross-functional. It is why it is called cross-functional. Many functions are there. So interactions between one function to another function takes place. Could be a sequential interaction from customer to sales to warehouse to customer service, or can be a direct interaction that is happening in between functions. So from a warehouse to customer, there is an interaction happening. So this is a cross function, right? There is a crossing between the function. One function is skipped and another function, the remaining 2 functions are communicating. That's why it's referred to as a cross-functional flowchart. So here, it's a vertical cross-functional flowchart. Drag it and drop it. When will I grade the assignment? Dongyu has a question. As soon as you post the assignment, within a day it will be graded. Okay. Now I have to add other functions. I just have one function. So my zooming is more. That's why it's not looking proper. Now it's of the same size. I need to add additional functions. You already know how to do this. We have seen this as a part of the activity diagram. Drag, drop. Drag, keep it at the end of this line, drop. That's it. Okay, give a title to this. It is a cross-functional flowchart for customer and sales workflow vertical view. In your company, you don't have to tell them what it is. Everyone knows what it means. You have to just mention customer and sales workflow. Next, you have to start the process. First, where is it starting? Go to the basic flowchart shapes. Start the process. Add a start. What is this? Customer places an order. So place order. Customer place order. Next, in sales, you have order completed. So from placed order, it goes to sales directly. So you have to check, is the order completed or not? Next, send order to warehouse for completion. Drag the process, drop it over here. Send order to warehouse for completion. Take the text and paste it here. You can redo it, but I'm just doing it because I have the details. And then item is in stock or not. So item in stock, question mark. So most of the time when you're using a decision symbol, please have a question mark so that it is clear it is a decision to be taken. Ship item to the customer. And then once the item is shipped, the customer should receive the item. That is the end of the process. So receive item. That is the end of the process. Here, first you have to define the functions. I'm sorry. Customer, sales, simple ones. Warehouse, this is customer service. And then refund and write to the customer. So if the item is not in stock, then you have to refund and write to the customer that sorry, item is not in the stock. It's going to be a disappointment to the customer in that case, but you have to manage it. So that is the end of the order process. So one end is either it's a failure, item is not there in the stock, you write to the customer, end the process. Otherwise, it's a success, item is found in the stock, you ship it to the customer and customer receives it. So once the customer receives it, you don't have to say end of the process. Receiving the item itself is end of the process. Or if you want to drag this even more, you can say receive the item and looks at the item or reviews the item. Any issues goes to the customer service. So that can also be included. It all depends on the number of steps you want to define. And this is done. If it is yes, if it is no, if it is order is completed, if the customer didn't complete the order, then go back to the customer screen to place the order. If the item is in stock, yes, what happens? If it is no, what happens? End the process. If the item is in stock, ship to the customer and then customer receives the item. This should be straight. Use the shift and the arrow keys, that will help you. If the, okay, first with cross-functional, my suggestion is use arrows very efficiently. Don't try to select all arrows and give it. It will be wrong because order is placed. It comes here. If the order is completed, yes. should come here. Then this is a no. So this is all okay. Item is in stock. Yes. But be careful where you have a different type of arrow. I'm not asking you to select each and every line and give a specific arrow. It's going to take a long time for you to complete then. At least those which have this kind of a looping stuff, you have to be careful, because the arrows will give a different meaning altogether if you use it wrongly. Okay. Now this is too long. Reduce the height of it. So what is this? Workflow definition phase. Or you can call it customer and sales workflow. Okay, now this is completed. You have to give a description what the diagram means, why you have created this cross-functional diagram. Okay. Then the number. So these are all standard ones, title, numbering. So always standard ones you have to maintain. This is how the diagram will look. I'm not going to do the horizontal view because I've already shown you how to create horizontal swim lanes in the activity diagram session. It is the same thing. Whatever we have created in the vertical here is the same thing that you have to replicate in horizontal, except the customer sales warehouse and customer service are in vertical left to right. Here it is going to be top to bottom. That is the only difference. So in the Word document, BRD document, what we have seen a horizontal cross-functional swim lane diagram. So you have to practice the horizontal view as an addition to the vertical view. Very simple. It's the same thing, except for how you place the shapes and how you connect. All other concepts are the same. So if I bring it to a system view, one page view, this is how it's going to look. So presentable, very well, easy to understand. 3-4 different functions and what's happening within each of the functions. Keep saving your diagram always. You might lose it. Okay, now this is done. Okay, that's good. We've covered quite a few topics today. Cross-functional, BRD, system architecture and sequence. We've covered 4 topics. Next session we will see use case diagram and other process related diagrams. Open to questions. Do you have any questions? Okay, you can also post the question on the blog. I'll be glad to answer you all. Assignments will be posted on the blog. You can answer those. Have a good day. Bye.